Hello and welcome to the 3-time award-winning Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you love adventure, challenge, and hearing from women who share their stories and provide top tips and advice to help you take on your own personal challenges, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. New episodes go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, with bonus episodes happening on a Thursday. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me, with Tough Girl challenges, give shout outs, and recommend other Tough Girl podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
My name is Aisling Byrne. I'm currently based in the UK, although, as you can probably hear from my accent, I am born and raised in Ireland. So I come from a small town in the Midlands in Ireland called Longford. And I've grown up show jumping predominantly as my main sport that I'm passionate about. But on the side of that is I also run a funding company and also a travel company. So that would bring American and Canadian clients into Ireland and Scotland, and we organise their entire vacations and their day-to-day itineraries. So quite a mixed bag between the three different things there. And notice how I said show jumping is the main thing and the real jobs are on the side, but obviously it should be the other way around. But I enjoy show jumping, of course.
No, I think it's build your life around your passions and your interests. Just because that's how other people do it doesn't mean that is necessarily the correct way. But growing up in Ireland, tell us about what your early years were like. You horsey family. Were you? What age were you put on? No.
Yeah, not at all horsey. No one in my house was into horses at all. So very typical Irish upbringing. We're very lucky. I have one brother, and our parents are very supportive, but very typical kind of Irish upbringing where if there was sports or, piano or ballet going on through school, we had the option to try it out if we wanted, but we weren't pushed into anything. So we could do it if we want, but didn't have to if we didn't want. And we tried our hands at a couple of things, ballet and piano being a couple for me. And then we just went to the local equestrian centre and tried horse riding and, liked it at the start. But really what started it off was the teacher there left the equestrian centre and set up on her own from her own house. And that was the kind of catalyst that started me off, because on the back of that, I ended up riding ponies down there and got a lot more time around horses, one-on-one. And then I ended up, a neighbour of mine used to buy and sell ponies, and I ended up riding a lot of them. So it was really exciting. We'd go to a sale and he might buy 3 or 4 ponies. And then the excitement that came after that, trying to figure out what they were like, what their personalities were, if they were good jumpers or not, and just getting them going and getting them registered with the Show Jumping Association of Ireland, doing some shows on them and then selling them on to their homes after that. So that was so exciting. But actually, all the while I didn't realise that I was learning skills to adapt to different ponies and different styles of horse riding and jumping them to get the best out of them. So that was really the start of it.
How old were you when you started horse riding?
I was probably considered later. A lot of friends of mine in the show jumping circles, they've been on ponies since before they could walk nearly. So I was about 7 or 8 when I started dabbling at it. And then I was about 11 before I got my own pony, and really enjoyed when I transitioned from ponies into horses. Really liked the horses because they weren't as cheeky as the ponies. I found ponies tend to have a mind of their own, and even when you have everything right, sometimes they can try it on a little bit. So the horses I found a bit more straightforward. Just progressed through there, and then I went to university, and I have to say my mum was a huge help and a huge supporter, because she tried on her during the week to keep them going by lunging them and putting them in a walker and that kind of thing. So she was instrumental in helping me continue at it. When I'd come home at the weekend, then we'd head to a show and compete. But without her help, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that.
So what is it about sort of show jumping? And do you remember when you started to think, actually, hold on, I want to make this a career. I want to become a show jumper?
I really, really enjoy the partnership with the horse. I really love how they want to help you out as well. So I really find that if a horse likes you, they will just they know kind of what you're trying to achieve at a competition, and they will try really hard as your partner to achieve it, which I just love because they don't have to do that. They're much bigger than we are. They're much stronger than we are. And if they decide they don't want to play ball with kind of what you're aiming for, they don't have to. So I really love when you have a horse that's kind of with you, and that they're so instinctive to what you're thinking that if you even think to turn, they're already turning, and that they're brave to take on the fences that you're pointing them at. For me, that's what really drives me. And I just love executing a plan at a competition. So, you've planned out your different distances and the amount of strides you're going to put in and where you're going to turn. So I love making the plan and then seeing if you can pull it off together. And if you've done a good round, then it's a great feeling.
So I'm going to ask a basic question and then a more advanced question. So for listeners who are maybe like, I watch show jumping when the Olympics are on every 4 years. I see the horses jumping and it looks beautiful and amazing, but I don't really know anything else about it. Like, how does show jumping work?
Well, show jumping is actually quite a fair sport in a way because it's not someone's opinion that the result is relying on. So when you go into the ring, you have a certain amount of time to complete the course. So that's the amount of fences. There's normally 13 fences to complete. So you have that set time, and then it's usually depending on the type of class, it's usually the person that clears all the obstacles with the fastest time to do it in the fastest time. So it's quite clear if, someone's knocked a fence, if they've refused a fence, which means the horse didn't jump it, or if they've done a circle for some reason. Very easy to see if it hasn't gone to plan. And then a lot of the technicality is with the rider placing the horse at the right point of takeoff to jump the fence. So a lot goes into that. So it's really using your eye to kind of get the distance that you want to take off from the fence. And so that's where a lot of the challenge is.
And so when you get to a competition, how long do you have before you know what the course is going to be like? And do you get to do any practice rounds?
No. So when you get there, they have a course walk right before the competition starts. So depending on what order you're drawn in, you could be first to go. So you really have maybe 15 minutes, or depending on the show, how much time they allow. So you will step out your distances on foot, and you'll calculate then on the related distances between fences. I hope I'm not getting too technical, but you'll decide what suits your horse best. So there might be two fences set a certain distance apart, and you might decide it suits your horse to go on that distance in 6 strides. That might suit them. Someone else's horse might like to do 7 strides. They might have a smaller step or a shorter step. So that's the kind of planning part that goes into it. So you don't get to practice the course itself, but you do get some single fences in the warm-up ring, and you can practice over them.
Awesome. Now, the more sort of technical question for for the people listening who are into their show jumping, that is their goal, that is their ambition. From your perspective, what does it take to make a great show jumper?
For the person themselves,
yeah,
the individual. I think it is one of the toughest sports because there's a lot of, I suppose, things to overcome. The saying, like to, brush yourself off and get back on the horse, literally comes from our sport a lot of the time. So there's lots of horses are a great leveler. You can win a class one day and fall off the next day. So there's so many variables that you can't always control. So you definitely need determination and tenacity. And I think a good affinity with animals is a big must because you really need them on your side. And then I think anyone can really do it once you keep trying. So really just to keep working hard at it, listen to everyone because you're actually learning something different from everyone you speak to. And everyone has different approaches to it, which I find fascinating. There's not one universal way of doing it. Some people ride with more pressure, some people with less. Some people use their hands more and communicate strongly. Others ride a little bit freer and open. And the beauty of show jumping is that different horses respond to those different levels of pressure. So what I enjoy about it is that you could have a world-class rider sit on a horse and it actually mightn't go as well for him as it does for a more amateur style rider that kind of leaves it free to do its own thing. So horses are a bit like people. They have their preferences and they have their preferred ways of going. And normally the trick is to figure out how to adapt to do that for them, to allow them to do that. So it's really interesting, and it's the partnership that counts at the end of the day. So horses don't always go the best for the best riders, which makes it so interesting.
And you talked about the partnership with the horse as well. Like, how do you build that partnership and that relationship with a horse? Like, what are your tactics? What are your go-to methods?
Well, I think being kind to them is a big part. Just spending time with them. I like spending time with them in the stable, not always when we're competing or working towards something, and realizing that sometimes they have an off day and to go a bit easier when you're doing your flat work, your schooling. A bit like ourselves, they all respond differently. They're different personalities. And you have to recognize that if one needs confidence of building up, then that's the thing to do. Then some of them are a bit lazier and, they need motivation and say, come on, we're going to do this session. And then afterwards you'll get a bucket of carrots or whatever it might be. So it's figuring out what makes them tick and what motivates them. And I suppose that's what they call being a true horseman or woman, is to just be able to read those little tells that they have and try to make them as happy as possible, because happy horses really do want to do their best for you, and they really do try for you then when it comes to competition time. So that's what I try to do. I'm always kind to the horses. I always understand that if something isn't going right, I'll look at everything first. I don't think that they're automatically trying to misbehave, and there's normally a reason for it, and it's just trying to figure out what that is.
You did actually have quite a sort of near fatal horse riding accident, and you don't need to relive any of the trauma, but would you be able to share maybe what age that happened, briefly, what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I was at a show in Portugal, and actually the show hadn't started. We were there a couple of days early, and I had a group of horses, and one of these horses actually belonged to a friend of mine. It wasn't one of my own, but I'd been minding it for a couple of months while she was away. She'd gone to Australia, and it was actually the last day I was going to be riding the horse, and I'd worked it in the arena, and we'd had a really nice time, and I was literally just walking on it back to the stables, and it had a phobia of tractors and a totally freak accident. And I don't think the horse ever meant for it to happen, but the tractor went by too close and too quickly, and he spooked and reared up on his hind legs. And I was very relaxed because I just thought, he'd go back down, but he lost his footing and fell back on top of me. Because I didn't, kind of panic, or I didn't bail out, I kind of fell with him. So we fell as a unit, and I kind of fell first, and then he fell back. I kind of opened my eyes and could see him coming. So he ended up kind of landing square on my middle section. So I broke both my hips, and my pelvis got smashed, and my spine and internal organs were damaged, and so on and so forth. So you can just imagine the middle part of me essentially was completely squashed. But it was just one of those freak accidents. It happened in the blink of an eye. There was nothing kind of anyone could have done. There was nothing I could have done really differently, which was of some comfort. I wasn't kicking myself for having made a mistake or anything. It kind of happened so quickly that it was done, and that was it.
Oh God. Thank you for sharing that. And you seem so
relaxed about it.
Yeah. So like it's just one of those things that happened. But
yeah,
what was when did you realize? Obviously probably straight away.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I remember thinking, how serious is this? And then, I kind of, I was lying there for a while and I couldn't move. And I thought, and of course I didn't lose consciousness. It would have been much easier if I had I could have woke up in hospital with some pain medication. But anyway, I remember then after a while I was waiting for the ambulance. So, everyone's kind of in a panic around me. And then I remember thinking, oh my gosh, imagine if this is just bad bruising, and my legs are gone numb, like maybe, and I tried to move, but obviously nothing happened. But at least I was thinking kind of positively, even if not realistically. But yeah, I knew then, I just knew that I remember thinking to myself that I'm quite a practical thinker. So once I knew that I couldn't move and there was nothing I could do, I just thought I'm going to reserve energy now because this is going to be a bit of a long day. That's what I did. I just kind of stayed quiet and told everyone it was okay, but that I was just going to reserve energy, really.
In terms of the, going to the hospital, getting the diagnosis, were they quite adamant, like, this is a career-ending injury, you may not walk again? Or
Yeah.
was there always an element of, like, look, there is a possibility for you to walk again?
No, they were quite adamant at the time when I first went in. So obviously I went in with the ambulance and it was in Portugal, as I said. So it wasn't just as clear cut probably as it would be if it was in Ireland or England. And I think when I went in first, they didn't realize the severity of it. And then they moved me on the stretcher and they realized I was bleeding internally quite badly. So then it was full kind of panic mode on. Everyone started rushing around. I was being rushed up to theatre because they had to stop the bleeding. So that was like, there was, quite a bit of blood involved. I probably shouldn't go into detail for your listeners, make them turn a shade of grey. So there was, there was a lot of movement then, which I was grateful for because I'd been left in A&E essentially when I came in through the ambulance on a stretcher for a long time. And that was actually the scariest part because I was lying there. I hadn't had pain medication. I was looking at the, squares on the ceiling and, nobody was coming to me and I couldn't get up or move anything to call anyone. So that was quite a scary point. And like essentially I was bleeding to death, but didn't realize it. So I was quite relieved when they all started kind of moving really fast around me because I thought, I can relax now because, they're taking over. But no, they really panicked when they saw the severity of the breaks and when they got the x-rays results back. In fact, the surgeon had his head in his hands and I gave him a little pep talk before the surgery, but he said afterwards, that I wasn't going to walk again. And to be honest, if I had stayed there, I actually wouldn't have walked again. I was just really lucky that I ended up going to a very specialist surgeon in Dublin that was able to do, I think, miracle work, to be honest, and that was able to patch me back up together and get me back on my feet again. Because even people now look at my x-rays sometimes and they say that they don't know how I'm upright. So I feel very lucky.
Was there a moment of, not sort of acceptance, but of like, mentally what was happening? Were you able to almost like detach yourself from the situation? So it's almost like, this isn't me who they're talking. Yeah.
Completely. Once I couldn't wait for them to, put me under anesthetic because I thought, oh, well, this is over to them now. I don't have to think about this. So I kind of thought, once I'd got myself into the operating theatre, it was out of my hands at that point. So it was a bit of a relief, to be honest. And then afterwards, I was in induced coma for a few days. And being brought round was a bit scary, to be honest, because I didn't know kind of how severe it was. They were talking about never walking again. I had such a busy life at the time. I was kind of all go at work and horses. I was doing a bit of modelling at the time. So everything that I was doing, I needed to walk for. And I just kind of remember thinking, like, what's my life going to be like now? I just thought, like, and because you're lying in intensive care and I could essentially only move my arms and head, that was like a really tough time because you have a lot of hours kind of left on your own to dwell on it. And it's just the unknown. It's the fear of the unknown, really. If you knew kind of how you'd be in 3 years, you wouldn't be as fearful because you'd work towards it. But when people are giving you kind of a negative outlook and you're already not sure about any of how this will be, that's quite a frightening time.
Yeah. Your calmness, like your demeanor, I find it fascinating. Have you always been relatively calm?
I never thought about that actually, but yeah, I think especially in a big kind of emergency situation, I am the calm one. Definitely. I'm very practical. I could probably thank my mum for that. She's very level-headed and practical in a situation. So yeah, I stayed straight. Weirdly, I was actually smiling in the hospital and thanking them. And as I said, giving the surgeon a pep talk. I told him I knew he'd be well able to put me back together and not to worry. I was telling him. So I think I'm just naturally, luckily, like that. And I think the bigger the catastrophe is, the calmer I go, which probably helps me when I'm competing, because the bigger the occasion, I seem to go quiet inside, just stay calm, I suppose.
Yeah. How long was your recovery journey to when you got back on a horse again?
Yeah, I remember someone telling me, after I'd had kind of some surgeries and I'd been moved by medical plane back to Ireland, I remember someone saying it'll be 3 years before you're anyway recovered. And I remember thinking, oh, that's crazy, like I'll be up and out in one. And I remember 3 years later thinking, oh, they were right. Like, and there was no chance I was going to do it in one. But, I was optimistic, I suppose. But it took me a long time to get off crutches. I did really well. And luckily, I stayed positive in my mindset. And I kind of learned afterwards that that's a really good, even if you have to fake it till you make it. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of down days where you just can't even pretend to be positive, when you're not sure what the future holds and you're in so much pain and you feel quite weak at the time. But I was generally so positive, and that really helped me actually recover in a quicker. It actually had like an actual impact on my recovery time, which amazes me to this day, because I can't believe your mindset speeds up your physical recovery. But there's been a lot of research to show that it does, which blows my mind. But 3 years later, I was still struggling to get, I was off crutches by then. But I went back to one of my consultations with the surgeon, and I said, I'm still on crutches, and, I'm working really hard. Is there anything else I should be doing? Or, in other words, why am I still on crutches and what can I do to get off them? And he looked at me like I was crazy, because obviously he'd seen what a mess I'd come in. And he kind of, spoke a bit, and he said something about acetabular this. And then he said, so in summary, you had two options, and that was to be dead or in a wheelchair. So I took my crutches and thanked him very much. And I said, okay, thanks a million. I'm delighted to be on crutches. See you next consultation, and left the room. So it took a while, but I think I did well to get off them, to be honest.
Yeah. With the positivity and staying positive, because, and I also do think there is like a mind body connection. I mean, that, I thought you were going to say it, but even like when I'm doing like hip thrusts, for example, and I'm trying to, like, I had very lazy glutes in the past. And so I'm literally thinking of my glute and squeezing my glutes when I'm doing it. So that's sort of like that mind body connection, and actually staying positive. Like, and obviously you do always have down days, but were there practical, tips or things that you were doing to manage your levels of positivity so that you didn't dwell or didn't go to maybe like quite a dark, depressive place? And this is, by the way, this is not blaming anybody for going to a dark, depressive place after, you've gone through an accident like this. But did you ever go anywhere which was really quite dark and depressed, or was that just never even an option?
Yeah, without realizing it, I was probably manifesting walking. I didn't quite know what that was at the time, but I could see myself getting out of the hospital bed and walking across the ward room. So I couldn't, I was 2 months non-weight bearing, so I wasn't allowed to put weight through my hips until they recovered from the surgeries. And without realizing that's what I was doing. So when the day came when the physios tried to get me to stand, they weren't expecting much, to be honest. Like, I don't think they expected me to walk even after having that surgeon operate on me. So they were amazed when I stood up and sat down, and then with a walker, I walked across the room and up towards the reception desk on our ward. And I wanted to keep going, but rightly so, they want me to go back to bed because they were afraid I'd fatigue. But I could sense them looking at each other over my head, like a bit in shock. And I didn't realize afterwards, when they did the nurse handover that evening, that they all cheered that I'd walked, because they really didn't expect it. But I could see myself doing it for so long while I was lying in the bed that it just seemed like the most natural thing in the world to me, that I would get up and with the walker kind of walk out of the room. So I think that was a good example. But I do remember one day when I had a really low day, and I was out of hospital at this point. I was determined to get back on a horse. That's what I was working towards. Hadn't gotten much encouragement so far, but thought, now that I was out of hospital, I could really get to work on it. And I went to a specialist physio, sports physio. So I thought, he's going to put the plan in place now, and I'm going to, do everything I can to get on it. Anyway, I went to him and he pretty much told me like to forget about it and it wasn't going to happen. And he told me out straight, like I was never going to ride a horse again. So I was like, I held it together while I was there. But when I came outside, my mum had brought me, I was devastated. So she rightly and thankfully pointed out that Nick Skelton broke his neck and was never going to ride again, and that he managed to get back on and win a gold at the Olympics. So I shouldn't give up just because it said I couldn't. So, and to persevere. So that kind of gave me some light at the end of the tunnel, and I kept persevering after that.
Did your confidence around horses change at all? Because I know it was, from what you shared, it was nothing you did. It was this freak accident and you did everything right. So was your confidence affected at all?
Strangely, no, and I think that was a big part of it. That it wasn't an accident that had happened in the ring, at a fence where I'd made a mistake that I'd been reliving. So I think I was really lucky that it was just a freak accident that had happened. I was so grateful to be back in the arena, being able to do it again, because I just didn't know if that would ever happen again. So I think that feeling of elation was so strong that I would persevere. Now my body used to react. I would have such dry mouth. I'd be a little bit tingly. My body was probably in fight or flight, but the rest of me was so happy to just get into the arena and hear the bell go that I could get the chance. It didn't really matter to me how the round went. That part I was fine. The only part I found where I got a little bit nervous was when someone else's horse started acting up, and I was kind of worried that mine would react, and thinking on it, that was probably a similar scenario where something outside my control kind of spooked my horse. And because I didn't have so much rotation in my hip, when I started back, I couldn't kind of bail out quickly. So I was a bit of a sitting duck. So that used to be quite a fear for me at the start, that, even if my horse did start rearing or bucking, I actually couldn't jump off. So that was a little bit scary, but I've kind of managed that since.
So do you remember the first time that you walked again?
It was that time in the hospital room when I got up with the walker, with the help of the walker.
Sorry, so let me clarify. And then that just progressed. Then just progressed. Okay, then just crashes. Okay.
I'll tell you about the first time I got on a pony again. Is actually my first pony that I had from childhood. So that I got when I was 11. Her name is Angel, and I came in, and because I didn't have the rotation in my hip, I couldn't kind of swing my leg to get on her. So my dad got a forklift and I stood on it and he lifted me up. And then I was able to kind of sit down onto her, and we walked around the house a couple of times, and I was the happiest person in the world, to be honest.
Oh, honestly, congrats. That's a hell of a journey.
Thank you.
Hell of a journey.
Very lucky.
Yeah, just absolutely amazing. And then, so how long ago was this?
That was 2018. It was actually this time of year, 2018.
How has the show jumping been since then? Like getting back into competing? Are you competing now on a consistent basis?
Yeah, it's actually been amazing. I think I enjoy it far more now than I used to, even though I wouldn't have thought that was possible. But I think it's taken the pressure off, because I feel anything I do now is a bonus. I'm not like striving for Nations Cups teams like, I might have been before, and jumping in ranking classes. So it's really let me just enjoy it. And I really don't sweat it. If, a horse knocks a fence, I don't get upset about it, because I can obviously have a different perspective now. So I really don't sweat the small stuff. I feel like that allows the whole thing to run a bit smoother, because I'm not over trying, which I probably would have done before, and I'm not looking for perfection, which in turn ends up everything going a little bit smoother.
With competing, how does that work? So are you flying all over the world? Are you mainly just going to Europe? Are you taking the horses out, or the horses already over there? Is it you doing it individually, or are you like paid by sponsors to do the horse jumping? Like, do you have somebody else who's like, hey, I've got these 10 amazing show jumping horses, I want you're my, like driving cars, round F1, you're like the rider, the driver. Is that how it works in the show jumping world?
So I'm doing it individually. So they're my own horses that I have. I normally bring about 4 to a show. I'll get to pick my own shows that I'm doing, and I try and match that up with my work calendar. So I'll often be doing work calls from the back of a horse, which I think people find a bit funny sometimes. But you do what you have to. And I will so for example, I will go to Spain to a tour there in March and April, and I'll bring the 4 horses. They'll go by lorry, by truck, and they'll go on the ferry to France and drive down to Spain. And we'll stay there for March and April. So we get to compete kind of 6 weekends, which is fantastic. We have a break in the middle of one weekend just to give the horses a rest. And then I have sponsors in the equestrian world. So everything from the tack for the horses, the competition wear for myself, the casual wear like coats and horse riding boots, all that kind of thing. So I have sponsorship in that way, but the rest of it, I get to pick and choose kind of what shows I'm doing, what horses I'm bringing. And I love building up a horse, getting a horse and building a partnership with it. Then depending on the horse, the age and what it is, either, I can sell it on to someone who needs that horse to bring them to the next level, or I'll bring it to the next level myself and keep it for that purpose.
I'm just thinking this just must cost an absolute fortune. Are you able to fund this through your travel company that you run?
Yeah, well, that's why I have to work on the side, which is a bit of an inconvenience. But I have so I have the finance company and the travel company, and I keep those two going to really support my habit.
And what does the travel company? How does that work? What's the travel company?
So the travel company is a bespoke travel arrangement. So it would be American clients coming, whether it's a group or a family, and they get in touch and say, for example, they're coming to Ireland for 2 weeks and they want someone to make all the arrangements, tell them what to do, where to stay. That's what we would take care of, all the details. So if it's a chauffeur driven tour, or if they need a coach for the group, or whether it's a self-drive, we arrange everything, make all the hotel bookings and day-to-day activities.
And is that like a horse specific thing?
No.
Okay. No.
Yeah, that's completely just general. We have done horse themed ones, golf theme, pottery, yoga. We get all sorts. We had one group that wanted to do churches and pubs as a mixture. So we get great fun things that we get to put together.
And then what's the finance company? What do you do in that space?
So that's completely different. So it's a litigation finance company. So it's lending to law firms, which is really different, I suppose. Some people mightn't have heard of it before. And we do that in the UK in a big way. So in big volumes of smaller claim amounts. And then we do also in Europe and the USA, we do larger ticket claims there as well. So that one keeps me really busy.
Oh, no, fantastic. That sounds amazing. So Aisling, for people who want to get into the world of show jumping, what advice would you have for people who are listening to this who are like, actually, I love horses, I love show jumping, I want to make it and be an international show jumper and travel to places like Spain with horses and, compete in these competitions. What advice would you share?
Well, depending on what age they are and what level they're at, I would say just get around horses to start with. You will get the opportunities. People will see that if you're a hard worker and you're interested and enthusiastic, people are crying out for people to help them with the horses because there's just not enough time in the day to manage them all normally. So just get yourself around. If you're younger and you're at school, get down to the local riding centre. How I used to do it was I do odd jobs at the local equestrian centre and then they would give me a free lesson that evening. So there's always ways to make it happen. Some people think money is a hurdle and it's too expensive. But there's an Irish guy who's actually doing fantastically well. And what he did was he identified a rider he really liked in Germany who was top level. And he rang him up and said he was coming to work for him for free. And he was just going to do that at, mucking out stables. The guy said, I've no horses for you to ride. And he said, that's okay. I just want to be in your yard learning from you. So he did that. And now he's obviously had the opportunity since to be on some of the best horses in the world. He's competing at the best shows globally around the world. And there's definitely avenues. So I would just say, get yourself around people that are good horsemen and learn from them and soak it all up and take any opportunity that you can.
What's your show jumping goal? What's your ultimate ambition that you're working towards?
Well, I really want to get back jumping ranking classes, world ranking classes, where you can win world ranking points. So I was doing that before the accident. I've done one since the accident, which was phenomenal. Like, I got such an adrenaline rush out of it. So I'm building back up to do that on a consistent level. That's kind of my first step of the goal, and we'll see where it takes us after that. But to be honest, I'm kind of enjoying it so much and getting such a buzz out of, jumping good rounds, winning classes, that to me at the moment it doesn't matter really the level. But I have stepped up a lot last year, and I'm hoping to do more of that this year.
And I could be completely wrong, but I almost feel as though there's no real age limits on show
No.
jumping, because there's a lot of older riders, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. John Whittaker is one to look at. He has a documentary out recently on Clip My Horse, and he's just phenomenal. I think he's 67, 69 maybe. I don't want to misquote him, but he is fantastic. He is top of his game. He's jumping at the Global Champions Tours still, which travel all around the world, from Miami to New York to all parts of Europe to Doha, everywhere. So he is competing and winning at that level at his age. And really, he's just a font of knowledge and experience that we could all learn from. So there's no real age limit, which is a great thing about our sport. It's not like football where, you kind of hit your cap at a certain point. You can keep going once you stay healthy in horses.
And where are you most active on social media? How can people connect with you and follow along with your show jumping journey?
I'm mostly on Instagram, to be honest, and my handle is Aisling Byrne 1. As you know, the spelling of my name is Irish, so it's a bit unusual. It's AISLINGBYRNE 1, and you'll find me on there.
Would you also like to share your travel company as well?
Yeah, it's Journey Through Ireland Tours, and it's Journey Through THROUGH Ireland, and we're on Instagram as well.
Perfect. I'll make sure that I include those links in the show notes so that people can connect and follow you. And Aisling, I'd love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there. For women who've had a setback, things haven't gone to plan. There has been, whether it's been a freak accident or something has just, ripped their dream away from them. Apart from just do it, apart from, just get back on the horse, or that sort of type of advice. What advice would you like to share? And you can take that in any direction that you would like.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that we're all at some point in our life presented with a challenge or a hurdle. And, some people get, tougher hurdles to overcome than others. And maybe because they're built to deal with them better than the rest of us. So I do think hard times are kind of par for the course. And I think sometimes that's put in our path to change our direction or change our perspective or to make us grow. Certainly, I think I've learned a lot of lessons from it. I've probably grown into a stronger, more confident version of myself. I don't let fear of maybe other people's opinions or fear of failing at doing something stop me now, because I just think, I could have been gone already. I've nothing to lose. I might as well give it a go. If I fail abysmally, I'll have learned something from it. I can try again. So I think that's important, to kind of not let it get you down, no matter how bad it looks. Just kind of reshape and think, okay, maybe this has put me in a different path. Maybe something better is waiting for me, even if it looks terrible on the outside or from the offset. Just think maybe there's a better direction, or this is going to push me, that I'm going to meet a really good person, or I'm going to find a passion that I didn't know I have. But as I say, I think like your mind is your most powerful tool. So if you can invest in that, invest in yourself, without sounding too woohoo, I really do think that's your biggest strength. So anything you can do for yourself. And to one of your questions earlier, you said about, how do you stay positive? And sometimes I realize that I'm trying to stay positive for others as well, because I notice that if I dip, it brings other people's moods down. So sometimes, even if I can't stay positive for myself, I'll do it for others to not have a kind of a knock-on effect on them. So if that's something that works for you, maybe that's one to keep in your mind. And I always think of, I get to do things now. I know it's a phrase that you might have heard a lot of times, but before I would have thought, oh, I have to go do this and I have to go to the gym. Whereas now, I nearly couldn't go to the gym. So now I get to say, I get to go to the gym. And it really just reshapes the perspective that we have on doing things. So it's to try and put a tinge of positivity on anything, even if you're not necessarily looking forward to it or you don't really want to deal with it.
Absolutely. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your journey and the challenges that you've faced and you've persevered through. I really appreciate you sharing, your words of advice and your top tips with us, and just best of luck with your next show jumping competition. I'm sure you'll absolutely smash it. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our chat.
Hey, tribe. How are you all doing? I can't believe it is the beginning of June. I mean, I can believe it, but I'm very excited. It is getting super close to when I head off to hike the GR10. I'm going to be documenting and sharing that challenge when I'm away. I'm going to be starting that challenge at the beginning of August. If you're not already, then please do follow along at Tough Girl Challenges. And if you follow along at Tough Girl Challenges on Instagram and Facebook, you'll also get the weekly updates of what our new episodes are going to be. So like on a Monday, I'll announce who we're having on the Tuesday, and on Wednesday, if we're having a bonus episode of who we're having on a Thursday. Occasionally, I'll also do like throwback posts of previous guests that we've had, like a throwback Thursday type of post as well. But just want to share a couple of the amazing women that we have coming up on the Tough Girl podcast. So on the 5th of June, we are going to be speaking to Anne Watmore. Let me share a little bit more about Anne and what she has done. So Anne is a fearless adventurer who proves severe asthma doesn't set limits. She shares more about cycling 3,000 kilometres across the UK on a recumbent e-trike. So I'm going to just read out the bio of what you can expect from this episode coming on the 5th of June. So in this episode, we're joined by the fearless Anne Watmore, an adventurer who proves that asthma doesn't have to set limits on what you can achieve. Anne has faced numerous health challenges, but rather than letting them hold her back, she's embraced adventure in a big way. In May 2024, she cycled over 3,000 kilometres across the UK on her recumbent e-trike Bob, completing a solo journey from Land's End to Orkney before speaking at Yestival. This was no easy feat. Anne had only a sixth of her lung function available and had to rely on determination, resourcefulness, and a supportive community to make this journey possible. In this episode, Anne shares how she turned her dream into a reality, navigating the ups and downs of planning such a massive adventure. She talks about the emotional and physical struggles of living with asthma, how she manages her condition on the road, and the lessons she's learned along the way. Whether you're living with a chronic condition, longing for adventure, or simply looking for inspiration to push through your own barriers, Anne's story is one you won't want to miss. Tune in to hear how Anne turned her limitations into opportunities for growth and exploration, proving that the only true limits are the ones we place on ourselves. So new episodes of the Tough Girl podcast drop every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring journey and the incredible stories of tough women pushing boundaries. Do you want to support the Tough Girl mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media in the world of adventure and physical challenges? Then you can. You can support via Patreon by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. And you can sign up as a monthly patron or an annual patron. And it just allows me to fund the running costs of the podcast and the hosting costs of the website as well. Your support really does make a massive difference. And it's just another way for you to pay it forward. The other options you've got as well to really sort of spread these stories of women doing these epic challenges is to post about it on social media, take a screenshot of what you're listening to, tag me in it at Tough Girl Challenges. If you write a review, that would be awesome. If you've got your own newsletter, include the Tough Girl podcast in it. If you've got your own blog, I'd love for you to write about an episode of the Tough Girl podcast. If you could tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast, just over coffee next time, maybe ask them, hey, do you listen to podcasts? Have you heard about the Tough Girl podcast? Well, have I got something awesome to tell you? The Tough Girl podcast has been going for 10 years. There's over 750 episodes available of women doing these epic challenges all around the world. It's won 3 awards. You get the idea. Basically, tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. Show a friend. To be honest, I think we're getting at the stage now where the majority of people do know what podcasts are and they know how to listen to them. But if you've got someone who maybe just still hasn't heard of podcasts and don't know how to listen to them, please do show them. That would just be absolutely epic. It would open up a whole new world to them, especially if they want to get into the world of adventure. They want to take on different challenges and do something outside their comfort zone. By hearing these stories, it will inspire them to think, okay, what could I do? What can I do next? What's my goal? What's my dream? What do I want to achieve? And this is a great starting point. Either just getting on Google, doing your own little bit of research, visiting the Tough Girl Challenges website, checking out the resources page, listening to a few different episodes in the areas that you're interested in. It can all make a difference. It could be the first step to this incredible journey that you are already on. So please do go check it out. I'd love to be kept updated with what you're up to as well. What training, what adventures are you working towards? What are the challenges that you're working through? Are there any topics or conversations that you think I should be having, or areas that you think I haven't focused on enough, whether that's money, whether that's like the planning, the preparation, the training, the nutrition? What area would you like me to dig into deeper? Your feedback is really important to me, and you can send me an email, sarah@toughgirlchallenges.com, or just send me a DM. It's really great to get feedback. Good or constructive is really appreciated. Negative feedback, not so much. Constructive feedback, yes. Like if I've made a mistake and need to be made aware of it, then help me grow, help me become a better interviewer, help me become a better host, help me become a better advocate for women in the world of adventure and physical challenges. Thank you again for listening. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.